My name is Dorothy Dot Simmons, and I am 70 years old. I live in Portland, Oregon, a city I've always loved for its rainy streets, tall pine trees, and quiet neighborhoods. I am a widow, and for most of my life, I worked as a librarian, surrounded by the comforting scent of old books and the calm whispers of students and visitors. I raised two children on my own after my husband passed away, my son Logan, now 36, and my daughter Holly, 35. I thought I had prepared for life's difficulties, but nothing prepared me for what came next. I want to tell you about a betrayal that shook me to my core, a betrayal I never imagined from someone I trusted completely, my daughter-in-law, Rebecca. It all began quietly, almost imperceptibly. After my husband's passing, Rebecca offered for me to live with her and Logan. She said it would be easier for everyone, that she wanted me to feel safe, cared for, and part of their household. I was hesitant at first. At 70, moving into my son's home felt like a big change, but I wanted to trust my family. I thought, she's Logan's wife. She must have good intentions. Little did I know, this would be the start of a nightmare where I would feel invisible, powerless, and at the mercy of someone I thought I could trust. From the first day, Rebecca smiled warmly, helped me unpack, and seemed genuinely kind. I felt a sense of relief, thinking I could live my later years with comfort and dignity. My pension, which was about $8,000 annually, should have been enough to support my basic needs alongside what Rebecca promised. But looking back, the red flags were there, subtle, almost impossible to notice at first. Little habits, small remarks. The way she insisted on handling all the money for my convenience seemed innocent, but my gut told me something was off. I had spent decades teaching myself to read between the lines, to notice small details, and even then, I almost missed it. I want anyone watching to understand that this story is not just about money. It's about trust, family, and the vulnerability that comes with age. I want you to see the emotional and psychological weight of what happens when someone close to you, who you let into your home, slowly takes control of your life. This is why I'm sharing my story, not just as a warning, but as a testament to resilience, courage, and the importance of paying attention to the signs, even when they are disguised as love. Life at Rebecca and Logan's home began with an illusion of safety. Rebecca greeted me each morning with coffee and smiles, and at first, I believed everything was as it should be. Logan was busy with work, often late, leaving Rebecca in charge of daily life. It seemed normal that she managed the household, but gradually her control extended to my finances. She insisted that it would be easier if she handled my pension deposits and payments. She said, "Mum, I'll take care of everything. You just relax and enjoy your days." And of course, I wanted to trust her. I wanted to believe she had good intentions. At first, the household routines were comforting. Rebecca cooked my favorite meals, made sure I had tea at all the right times, and helped me with little things like laundry and groceries. I began to feel a sense of belonging, a kind of reassurance that my later years could be peaceful. My daughter Holly would call occasionally, checking in on me, but I didn't want to worry her. I thought I could manage, as long as Rebecca was helping. But slowly, the cracks started to appear. Groceries ran out faster than they should have. Small conveniences I had grown accustomed to, like fresh fruit or warm bread, became rare treats instead of everyday items. When I asked, Rebecca would say, "Don't worry, Mum. I've got it covered." At first, I didn't question it. She was Logan's wife, after all. But the feeling of discomfort, that quiet doubt in my stomach, began to grow stronger each day. Evenings were the hardest. Logan was often away on business or social obligations, leaving Rebecca as the only person I interacted with for hours. I began to feel isolated. Sometimes I would sit quietly in the living room, pretending to read, while Rebecca moved about the house, checking her phone or tidying up my documents. I couldn't pinpoint why I felt uneasy, but it was a slow, gnawing sensation that something was wrong, something I couldn't see clearly yet. Despite the unease, there were moments that almost lulled me into complete trust. Rebecca would ask about my day, my memories, my past work at the library. She seemed genuinely interested in my stories, asking detailed questions about the books I loved and the students I had taught. I began to confide in her small things, like which tea I preferred or which neighborhood walks I enjoyed. Those moments felt warm and humanizing. I almost forgot the doubts creeping into my mind. I began to let my guard down further. Some evenings, I would sit with her in the kitchen while she cooked, and we'd talk about Logan, about Holly, about old friends. She would laugh at my jokes and nod in understanding when I reminisced. I thought maybe I had been too cautious before. Perhaps Rebecca was truly a daughter I had gained, someone I could rely on for companionship in my later years. However, I noticed subtle inconsistencies. Small things, like the way she handled my checkbook or the way she avoided direct answers when I asked about bills, planted tiny seeds of doubt. Yet I suppressed these doubts because the alternative, suspecting a loved one of betrayal, felt unbearable. I wanted to believe in family, in love, and in loyalty. These early months of warmth and attention only made the eventual betrayal sharper and more painful. It began with minor shortages, milk running out midweek, groceries that I had specifically asked for missing, small but meaningful comforts gone. At first, I blamed myself. Maybe I forgot to ask for the right things. Maybe I miscounted my spending. But then I started noticing that my pension deposits were consistently lower than I expected, and Rebecca seemed to have explanations ready. "Mum, don't worry. I've covered some bills in advance for you," she would say casually, smiling as if the matter were trivial. But the feeling of discomfort in my stomach grew heavier. I realized that my independence, which I had fought for my entire life, was slowly slipping away, unnoticed by anyone except myself. There were evenings when I would sit quietly, staring at the empty refrigerator shelves, and a wave of helplessness would wash over me. I felt trapped in my own home, living under the control of someone I had welcomed in with open arms. Yet, the fear of confrontation, the desire to maintain family peace, kept me silent. Small signs of deception began to accumulate. Bills misplaced, my pension statements subtly altered, and the persistent sense that my life was no longer under my own control. Each day, the quiet anxiety grew heavier, creating a tension I couldn't ignore for long. My daily life became a series of careful maneuvers. I planned meals based on what little was left in the pantry, rationing food like a secret. I often ate alone, telling myself it was for my health, even as my stomach ached. I avoided asking for extra help, fearing that probing questions would expose my vulnerability. Mornings were the worst. I would wake, make tea, and watch Rebecca move around the house with quiet efficiency, handling all aspects of my life that should have been mine. It was a strange combination of comfort and imprisonment. She provided the basics, yet I felt powerless. My autonomy had been stripped under the guise of care. Even small interactions with Holly over the phone were bittersweet. She would ask if I was eating properly, if I was comfortable, and I would lie to protect her from worry. "Yes, everything's fine," I said, even as my heart sank with every passing day. The quiet despair became a heavy companion, shaping every moment of my waking life, until the day Holly discovered the truth and changed everything. Over time, my unease intensified. Small inconsistencies in Rebecca's behavior, once easy to dismiss, became impossible to ignore. I noticed her constantly reviewing my bank statements when she thought I wasn't watching. She would shuffle papers, close tabs on her computer too quickly, and mutter excuses whenever I asked about bills or account balances. My gut told me something was amiss. I started keeping track of dates and amounts, comparing them with my pension deposits, and the numbers never quite added up. The feeling of being watched, of having my life silently controlled, gnawed at me. I realized that my financial independence, something I had worked for my entire adult life, was slipping away under the guise of care. Rebecca's warm smiles now carried an edge of authority, a subtle assertion that she was in control, and I was to trust her blindly. Even the familiar scent of the kitchen or the warmth of her voice, once comforting, began to feel like tools to distract me from noticing the truth. I tried to rationalize my fear, telling myself I might be overthinking. But the evidence was subtle, yet undeniable. Missing receipts, unexplained charges, and the quiet way she avoided showing me my full statements. I felt a knot in my chest every time I thought about confronting her, afraid of the confrontation and the possible fallout. The house that had once felt safe now carried an invisible tension, a quiet unease that shadowed every interaction. At night, I lay awake, reviewing events from the day, replaying every word and gesture. Small things, like her insistence on handling my correspondence or her casual remarks about my conveniently managed pension, began to pile up in my mind. My instinct screamed that something was wrong, yet I felt powerless, unsure of how to act. The quiet dread that had settled over my life was heavy, a constant reminder that even in familiar spaces, deception can hide behind affection. The turning point came unexpectedly. Holly was visiting one afternoon, and I casually mentioned some of the difficulties I had been experiencing, running out of food, confusion over bills, and unexplained withdrawals from my pension. She immediately sensed something was wrong and asked to see my recent bank statements. I handed them to her hesitantly, feeling a mix of hope and fear. Her eyes widened as she scanned the numbers. "Mum, this doesn't make sense. These withdrawals, these amounts. Rebecca has been taking most of your pension?" Her voice trembled with a mix of shock and anger. I felt a wave of relief and despair all at once. Relief because someone finally understood. Despair because the betrayal was far worse than I had imagined. Holly spent the next few hours meticulously going through every statement, comparing them with my pension records. The evidence was undeniable. Rebecca had quietly taken control of my finances, diverting funds for her own use, leaving me to survive on scraps while claiming she was helping. The realization was devastating. Not only had I been deceived, but it had been happening right under my nose, every day, for months. The house felt smaller, the walls closer, as I absorbed the truth. Holly's presence was a balm, a shield against the isolation and helplessness that had been my constant companion. Together, we made a plan. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity and purpose. The fear that had bound me in silence began to loosen its grip. With Holly by my side, the confrontation was inevitable. One evening, we asked Rebecca to sit down with us in the living room. Holly's voice was firm, unwavering. "Rebecca, we need to talk about my mother's pension. We know you've been taking most of it without her permission." "Why?" I sat quietly, my hands trembling. My heart ached as I waited for her to respond, hoping for some shred of honesty, some explanation that might make this bearable. But Rebecca remained silent, her eyes avoiding mine. The room was heavy with tension, every second stretching endlessly. I could feel the weight of betrayal pressing down on me, sharper and colder than anything I had experienced before. Finally, I whispered, "Why did you do this, Rebecca?" Her silence was louder than any words. It was a wall of denial, a refusal to acknowledge the pain she had caused. The anger, disbelief, and sorrow inside me collided, leaving me breathless. Holly held my hand, offering strength and courage I didn't know I still possessed. That evening, I understood that trust, once broken, cannot be repaired with words alone. Actions would be required. The next morning, Holly called a lawyer. We began gathering every document, statement, and record of my pension deposits and withdrawals. The process was meticulous and exhausting, but it was necessary. Each piece of evidence reinforced the reality. Rebecca had exploited me, taking advantage of my age and trust. We filed a formal complaint with the pension board and my bank. Holly handled the communications, making sure that every detail was documented. I felt a strange mix of fear and relief. Fear of the legal battle ahead, and relief that my voice and my rights were finally being recognized. I began to feel a flicker of empowerment. For the first time in months, I sensed that I was not entirely powerless. During this period, the emotional toll was significant. I felt anger, sadness, and disbelief, but Holly's presence was unwavering. She reminded me that fighting back was not only about money, it was about reclaiming my dignity and autonomy. Each call to the bank, each signed document, each meeting with the lawyer was a step toward regaining control over my life. News of the confrontation and legal action reached Logan. He was shocked and furious. "Mum, you're 70. This shouldn't have happened," he exclaimed. His anger was justified, but it also reminded me of the complex emotions surrounding family betrayal: shock, disbelief, and protective instincts. Logan's reaction highlighted another dimension of the ordeal: the emotional ripple effects that extend to everyone involved. Our home, once a place of trust and comfort, had become a battlefield of emotions. Holly and I stood united, but the tension with Logan and Rebecca created a delicate balance of confrontation, explanation, and emotional recovery. I began to see the broader picture. Betrayal does not only affect the person directly harmed, it affects the family dynamic, trust between all members, and the perception of safety within one's own home. The tension was palpable, yet it also strengthened the bond between Holly and me. Together, we were ready to face whatever came next. After the confrontation, the house felt heavy with tension. Rebecca's silence had left a void, an unspoken acknowledgement of betrayal that was almost suffocating. I felt a complex wave of emotions: hurt, disbelief, anger, and an underlying sense of relief that the truth was finally out. For the first time in months, I didn't feel invisible. My struggles were seen, my pain validated. Rebecca attempted to apologize quietly, muttering words that felt hollow against the months of neglect and manipulation. I wanted to scream, to confront her, but Holly held my hand gently and whispered, "Mom, it's okay. We will handle this together. You don't have to forgive her, but we'll fight for you." Her words were a balm, giving me courage I didn't know I had left. The emotional fallout wasn't limited to anger or sadness. There was also guilt. Guilt that I had trusted so easily. Guilt that I had stayed silent, letting months go by without speaking up. Yet, Holly's presence reminded me that acknowledging the betrayal was the first step toward healing. We spent days discussing strategies, documenting every detail, and preparing ourselves emotionally for the legal and personal battles ahead. The emotional bond between Holly and me strengthened during this period. She became my advocate, my shield, and my source of strength. I realized that family isn't defined only by proximity or relationships. It's defined by who stands with you when the world seems against you. For me, that person was Holly. Together, we faced the aftermath of betrayal, transforming despair into determination. The legal proceedings were slow but steady. Holly and I presented all the evidence: the bank statements, pension records, and every document that proved the misappropriation. After weeks of formal hearings, discussions, and mediation, I received news that a major portion of my pension would be returned. The relief was overwhelming. I felt like I could finally breathe again. Regaining control over my finances was only part of the restoration. Holly helped me set up new banking arrangements, ensuring that I had oversight and security, preventing anyone from manipulating my money in the future. This sense of autonomy, once stripped from me, returned gradually. The house, though still carrying echoes of betrayal, began to feel like a home again. The restoration was not just financial, it was emotional and psychological. For the first time in months, I felt empowered. I could plan my days, buy what I needed, and live without the constant fear of manipulation. Holly's support had been pivotal. She taught me that age is not weakness, and standing up for yourself is a form of strength, not confrontation. Through these weeks, I rediscovered a version of myself I feared had been lost, the confident, independent woman who had lived her life with dignity and purpose. Reflecting on the events, I learned that trust, even within family, is fragile. Love alone cannot protect you from betrayal. I had believed in the veneer of care, the smiles and gestures of attention. But those can be deceptive. The experience taught me that vigilance, awareness, and personal boundaries are crucial at any age. I realized that trusting someone does not mean surrendering your autonomy. Even in families, it's essential to monitor finances, maintain independent control over important accounts, and not assume that care is synonymous with honesty. The lessons were painful but necessary. I felt anger, sadness, and even shame, but I also felt a renewed sense of clarity about life and relationships. Holly reminded me often, "Mum, this isn't your fault. You trusted, and you acted when you could. That's what matters." Her perspective helped me forgive myself for the months of silence and fear. Trust can be rebuilt slowly, but self-respect and self-protection are non-negotiable. If there is one lesson I want everyone to take from my story, it is this: dignity, self-respect, and independence are priceless. Betrayal can happen anywhere, even within families, but you have the right and responsibility to protect yourself, emotionally, financially, and legally. Age or vulnerability is not weakness. It is a stage in life where awareness and action are crucial. Standing up for your rights does not make you ungrateful or disloyal. It makes you strong. It makes you resilient. I learned that love alone cannot shield you from harm. Awareness, courage, and a willingness to act when necessary are what preserve your life, your dignity, and your peace of mind. Finally, with the pension restored and a sense of security regained, I felt a profound mix of relief and empowerment. Rebecca's betrayal had tested me in ways I never imagined, but it also revealed the strength within me and the unwavering support of Holly. I had survived emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, and months of fear. More importantly, I had reclaimed my autonomy, my peace, and my confidence. I want viewers to understand that this story is more than about money. It's about courage, vigilance, and the importance of standing up for yourself. Betrayal can come quietly, but strength can rise even louder. Holly's support, combined with careful action, ensured that I could live my later years without fear or oppression.